Hi, officer. I'm so sorry for speeding.
What is your first name?
Frida.
And last name?
Go, ma'am.
You are free to go, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and Jon, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
Jon, it's already time for you to make fun of me. You can go ahead and start making fun of me right now. Go ahead.
Well, Brad, I mean, where do we start? With the letter A? Like the fact that you once saw an aardvark by the side of the road and called 911? Is that what you mean?
The latest reason for Jon to make fun of me. Jon's like a well-oiled machine, and he calls in usually 5 minutes before 7 o'clock. So I get up this morning, go to the station, get ready to go, and Jon, it's 6:57, and Jon hasn't called in yet. So I called Jon, and I said, "Hey, Jon, it's time to go on the air."
You said you're 30 seconds late.
I said, "You're 30 seconds late." And Jon says, and I didn't get this.
Go ahead, Brad.
No, you go ahead. It's funny.
I say, Brad, it's 5:56.
And I said, "Yeah, Jon, we need to go on the air," or something like that. And then it hit me. I go, "Oh, my God, I'm an hour early."
And I was trying to speak in hushed tones because I have offspring that were still sleeping. I like to have cinnamon rolls ready, like when they wake up. I like them to wake up to the scent of cinnamon rolls. So I'm cooking my hipster avocado toast. I got my coffee going. I got cinnamon rolls going. And I'm trying to speak in a hushed tone. And I'm like, "Okay, Brad, I'll talk to you in an hour."
Yeah, so nobody can say that I'm a slacker, because who shows up for work an hour early, right?
An hour. And you know what? As I pointed out to a beautiful young woman this morning, and Brad Hildebrand both, this is what happens when you're 89 years old.
That's right. And by the way, you got a little clicky thing going on there. Are you moving?
Oh, I'm sorry, but yeah, I'll move that. And I'll be back in the Combest home studio in about 4 minutes.
Okay, that is Jon Combest, Combest, who never misses an occasion to make fun of me and my age and the whole bit. But I love it because, once again, as my old friend Randy Bluestone used to always say, the better you are, the better friendship you have with someone, the more S you can give them, if you know what I'm saying. Combest. Put it together with Jon on the front, put a .com on the back end, you have JonCombest.com. 23 years plus, every single day. He's never missed a single day. To me, that is an incredible record. I find that amazing. Today's society where people can't work a whole week, but that's a whole nother story. Every single day he puts together this list of all the important things that you should know about. It's like the Matt Drudge report of Missouri. And he's got political stuff on there. He's got governmental stuff in there. Sometimes he's got funny ha-ha stuff on there. We started off with this guy whose name is...
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what does he do?
Now on with the countdown.
And we start with...
In third place...
Brad, you mentioned funny ha-ha stuff. And that's where we were with number one on our list yesterday. We talked about Missouri State University President Richard Williams. And the fact that when he was at Utah Tech, he had a little prank that he pulled on his buddy, who was a fellow administrator. His buddy got a vasectomy. And Mr. Williams went to his friend's house and put in a couple eggplants there and a zucchini and made a vasectomy joke. And we talked yesterday, Brad, about the fact that it was kind of refreshing to have somebody in higher ed with a sense of humor, right, Brad?
Don't tell me he got fired.
He did not yet get fired, Brad. And the operative word in that sentence is yet. Because, as reported by Claudette Riley of the Springfield News Leader today, she found out that on Friday, the Missouri State University Board of Governors held an emergency meeting, Brad.
Oh,
and here's the beauty of it. I know you're a big fan of the Sunshine Law and all the machinations of the Sunshine Law. Missouri State University is supposed to give everyone 24 hours before they have a meeting of the Board of Governors. However, that can go out the window when there is an emergency. And an emergency would include, Brad, as they read it, a penis joke. So yes, at 3 p.m. On Friday, one of your other favorite things to point out, Brad, is that when you want to bury bad news, of course, you do it on a Friday afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
So on Friday at 3 p.m., the Missouri State Board of Governors said, we're having an emergency meeting in 90 minutes at 4:30 p.m. Central. We're going to congregate, and we're going to discuss a very important matter. But we're not going to tell you what that matter is. And here's some of the things that it could include. Personnel decisions, hiring and firing. Then immediately after the meeting began, they went into a closed session, Brad.
Of course.
Because go ahead, Brad.
I said, of course they went into a closed session.
Of course they go into a closed session, because who needs to watch a discussion about an administrator with a sense of humor? So as it turns out, nobody knows what happens. Now, here's the intriguing piece, I think, that is a relevant follow-up to our conversation yesterday. Yesterday, I mentioned that I believed that Mr. Williams had mentioned this incident as to Missouri State as one of the reasons why he left Utah Tech. Now, the reporter, Claudette Riley, asked Missouri State that same question on Saturday. She emailed them on Saturday, and she has yet to get a response. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're hiding from her, because as you and I point out, Brad, who works on a Saturday?
Yeah,
I mean,
nobody.
why would anybody do work on a Saturday, right?
Right. Well, that's John Combest's idea, but that's not mine. But that's another
That's exactly
story.
right. That is my idea. So what we don't know is if Mr. Williams chose to disclose this incident before the lawsuit took place. And for those who didn't hear yesterday you can go to episode 235. It's A block if you go to bjshow.video. And we broke down exactly what happened here. But there's a federal lawsuit because when without belaboring it again, when Mr. Williams left this prank on his buddy's doorstep on his on the patio, I guess, he signed the name of 3 administrators as a joke. A legal counsel, a deputy legal counsel, and a woman who's like their DEI queen, their Title IX person. And now those 3 folks have sued Mr. Williams, the university, and 24 other defendants over this vulgar act, and essentially saying that this is part of a hostile workplace. Like you can't accuse a higher ed administrator of having a sense of humor, Brad, because that'll get you sued.
Have you ever heard the phrase, John, wound too tight?
I have heard it too. I have heard that before, Brad. Are you suggesting that these 3 administrators might be wound a little too tight?
Not only am I suggesting it, I'm saying loosen up, you knuckleheads. I mean, come on, can't we have a good yuck every once in a while? I mean,
absolutely not, Brad.
I don't, here we go once again. I've talked about this before, and some of the classes that, quite honestly, I got forced into because of the fact that, and this may sound weird, but I had a deal where I sort of knocked out all my requisite classes when I was going on my undergraduate degree. And in order to graduate, I needed to take a bunch of electives. So I started taking all sorts of crazy classes like astronomy, which I thought I wouldn't hate. And I absolutely loved my astronomy class. And I took the psychology class. And I was fascinated by Maslow's theory of hierarchy. And once again, here we go with a perfect example of Maslow's theory of hierarchy. If we were under attack by the Russians right now, and they had just, broken through the west and the east coast fortifications the United States has, and they're moving toward the Midwest, do you think we would be talking about this, John?
Absolutely not.
That's my whole point. And the idea being is that it's just sort of goofy stuff. And once again, the guy, it's like, ha ha, funny, And it's not like he perpetrated this on a woman, like let's say, like she had a
mastectomy.
Or her hysterectomy or a mastectomy, something like that.
Yeah.
It's another dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of dude humor, and dudes get it, right?
Now, first of all, Brad, it's very cisgender of you to assume everyone's gender here. So I would just like to point that out. And let's face it, Brad, you have never been framed for the crime of placing a zucchini and eggplants on another man's front porch.
Well, I have been gotten in trouble with J.C. Corcoran. That happened again yesterday.
You know what? Well, how about the sound of a fist hitting your face?
Well, we have another J.C. Corcoran confrontation on Facebook, which we'll talk about later. Okay.
Oh, I can't wait. When it comes to a sound of a confrontation coming out of nowhere, that leads nicely into story number 2.
Which is?
Up a notch to number 2.
The fun work of elections is over, Brad. All the joy and pain of elections is done, and now it's time to get back to real work. Now, leaders of the Democrats and Republicans, both nationally and in the state of Missouri, are picking their leaders. And it was widely assumed that Jon Patterson from Lee's Summit, Missouri, was going to be the incoming Speaker of the House. In fact, representatives got together last week and decided, the Republican caucus, that Jon Patterson would be their leader. However, something has changed in the last, I guess call it 48, maybe 72 hours. State Representative Justin Sparks of Wildwood has said that he will be challenging Jon Patterson to be Speaker of the House. Now, this set off a whole bunch of chatter on social media, Brad, and even Scott Fawn had a midweek update yesterday. Scott was talking about the fact that he expected it to be pretty boring, but then Justin Sparks posted his video to Facebook talking about how he's running for Speaker. I would point out the fact that Cameron Parker, who's a state representative, a woman from the southeast part of the state, was on Scott's show. I didn't listen to the whole interview, but in general, Cameron Parker was saying, you know, if Justin Sparks was going to run, he had an opportunity to tell us all about it last week when we were together at caucus. Cameron Parker says that she was shocked. She says that beating Jon Patterson to be Speaker of the House is unlikely. But Brad, in the bigger picture here, and this might be something that we need to discuss, in the bigger picture, we talked a lot last session about how the Freedom Caucus is known for, they would say, standing on principle. Other people would say creating havoc and chaos. Justin Sparks is a member of the Freedom Caucus. So to me, this seems like a way that, at bare minimum, Justin Sparks would say he's standing up for the pro-life cause. He's not going to allow Amendment 3 to go unchecked. If you were a cynic and a critic of the Freedom Caucus, you would say that this is the Freedom Caucus trying to flex their muscles before session has even started.
Okay, this morning, because of the fact that I was an hour early for the show.
You were on Eastern time, Brad. Give yourself a little grace.
I went back out after I embarrassed myself calling John an hour early, and I went and got myself some breakfast, and I was listening to 97.1 on the way back, and I heard Mark Cox interviewing. And do you know John Lamping real well, or is he just like a passing acquaintance?
Oh, yeah, I would say I know him pretty well, yeah. Okay. I don't know if he would claim me, but I feel like I know John pretty well.
He was on with Mark Cox, and they were discussing this exact thing. Now, I have a couple questions for you, since this brought up some things for me. Isn't it normally that you can't be the speaker until you're on your fourth term? Isn't that what it normally is?
No, but JP has been around for quite a while. So are you asking that about Justin Sparks or Jon Patterson?
Because what Justin Sparks is he's going into he just got reelected for his second term. Isn't that what I'm thinking?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it is the second term.
So JP he's just got reelected for his fourth term, didn't he? Or am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, he's been around longer than Sparks for sure.
Okay, so John Lamping said that he thought that Justin Sparks would be a good person to be the speaker, but he says I'm paraphrasing. He says his chances are S and N, which is slim and none, and he doesn't think it's going to happen. And he sort of referred to what you were saying, that it was sort of more of a posturing kind of thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks would say that. So, excuse me, I feel like I could be pretty objective about this. As you know, Brad, before this year, I hadn't been in Jeff City in 15 years. So I'm quite separated from the culture. I don't know a lot of the personal back and forth that goes here. To me, I think in the broader picture, and I talked about this on the election night show with Scott Fawn, if you're a member of the Freedom Caucus, you've spent a lot of time beating up on like Caleb Rowden and Governor Parson. They're gone. And I think Mike Kehoe is too popular and too strong to beat up on. So if you go down the chain, you might see an incoming Speaker of the House who is a kind and polite and generally soft-spoken man in Jon Patterson, and think, wait a minute, maybe I'll take shots at this guy, see how they land. No harm, no foul. We'll see how much he pushes back. So to me, now Scott Fawn pointed out on that same show that would be quite unwise for a state rep to take on Jon Patterson, because if they underestimate his toughness, then they're in for a rude awakening, so to speak.
John, once upon a time, see what you're missing. I can walk into Madison's in Jefferson City, and as I walk through the door, there'll be like a chorus, "Hey, it's Brad, he's here." See, but that you don't quite get that reception.
Was there another Brad in Jeff City?
Yeah, there was another Brad in Jeff City.
Brad Green?
Yeah,
He was a
like
likable guy. I
Yeah.
liked Brad Green.
Okay, last but not least.
The number one.
Speaking of social media and leadership elections and a Führer, not like a President Trump Führer that they call him, but actually like F-U-R-O-R, Josh Hawley has indicated who he's going to vote for in the Senate Majority Leader race. You know, there's a big battle going on between John Thune of South Dakota and Rick Scott of Florida, and also a guy named John Cornyn of Texas. Well, guess what? Although many conservatives are backing Rick Scott from Florida, Josh Hawley says that he is aligning and is proud to align with the Texan, John Cornyn. Brad, if you were to speculate on why Josh Hawley would side with someone who might be viewed as a little bit more mainstream conservative more than Rick Scott, what would you speculate this is about?
That he doesn't wear tight jeans and pirate shoes?
Yes, because they want a little bit of diversity in dressing. You're exactly right. I'll give you a hint, and it's a topic that you are one of the region's experts on, and I mean that sincerely. It has to do with a little creek running through North St. Louis County.
You know, once again, I mean, I make fun of Josh Hawley, but boy, he's in the corner of all the North County and the St. Charles County people about the nuclear waste and the hazardous waste cleanup. And, you know, once again, that happened back in the early 40s, and we're now almost in the mid 20s. In a few months, it'll be 2025, so we'll be halfway through this decade. 80 years has gone by, and they still haven't addressed this. Although, John, remember, was it last month before, they did put up those signs, and that
signs are up. Go take them to your grandpa
right.
who was splashing around in the 1940s. Brad.
Right.
Go take them to grandpa and say,
Right.
"You should have read the sign, punk."
If you don't know what we're talking about, with all the hubbub, and that's one of the words that John uses a lot, which my mom used to always use all the lot, which I like. They recently put up signs along Coldwater Creek, essentially not saying that you should not bathe in the creek or drink the creek water, but essentially, what is it? You're not supposed to tamper with the soil. Isn't that what it says? Something like that?
Yeah, don't go digging. Deep,
Don't go digging.
Now, that's just think about the fact back at Hazelwood High School. That's what a lot of your girlfriends told you when you take them to the bench seat. But the most important thing here, Brad, is that Hawley was quoted by Politico and Joe Holloman of the Post-Dispatch. We should give him credit. He summarized this in a piece that he has up. Hawley says, first of all, that Cornyn has helped. I'm sorry, it wasn't to Politico. It was to The Hill. He says that Cornyn has raised millions of dollars for competitive Senate races. So he pointed to like the partisan fact. And then Hawley points out that Cornyn was a strong supporter of RICO, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. Again, the Coldwater Creek, not just Coldwater Creek, but Weldon Spring and the radiation compensation provision. The way I look at it, Brad, is that, and let's be blunt and let's try to be objective as we can about Hawley. There's a lot of people in Washington, D.C., a lot of Republicans who he has probably rubbed the wrong way. Like, I don't think Hawley cares too much about making friends in Washington, D.C. So if you're Hawley and you got a handful of people who are really on your side and who have stood up for you, particularly on RICA, why wouldn't you support them?
Once again, I'm ambivalent about Hawley. I will say that when you watch his Senate hearings, he is merciless. I mean, I would not is he a former prosecutor? Is that what he did when he was an attorney?
I don't know if he was a prosecutor, but boy, he prosecutes in the Senate. That's
Man,
for sure.
does he ever? I would never want to be on the witness stand with him prosecuting me because of the fact that he just. He's just merciless. And what's interesting about it is, what I find fascinating, if you see some of these, and they're all over YouTube, the shorts of him. There's tons of shorts of him, asking these government officials, and they won't answer. I mean, he answers question, keeps asking the same question over and over. And it's like, okay. The interesting thing about this is, it's going to sound like I'm in the tank for the Republicans, which I'm not. If anything, I'm more of a libertarian. I think both sides suck, to be honest with you, but that's just me. Okay. If anything, I hope that some of these names that are being floated for the cabinet positions in the Trump administration are going to be stand-up people that if they do get called on the carpet, they won't give the rope-a-dope answers that the current, Biden cabinet people give. You know what I'm saying, John?
I do know, and I just know that if I was working for FEMA and I came to Brad Hildebrand's house, I would skip over it. That's all I have to say. Hawley mentioned that, by the way. That's in the Joe Holloman piece, too. Maybe we'll talk about that in a different segment. It looks like that woman was fired.
Is that a story? Now, once again, how many times do you hear that anybody from the federal government ever gets fired? How many people got fired from the Secret Service details or the whole agency over the Trump, the Trump assassination attempt? One. Nobody.
Yeah, I don't think so. I do think that woman that looked like Melissa McCarthy is going back to doing movies, though, Brad. And if you want to get fired from FEMA, you should have just gone to somebody's house with a zucchini and 2 eggplants.
That's all it takes. John, I was thinking about starting a new trendy restaurant in the Central West End. I'm going to call it Zucchini and 2 Eggplants.
He called it. This Mr. Williams called it a zuweenie, which I thought was funny.
Zuweenie. Okay, we have to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search Jon Combest. That's Combest, Jon Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?